Hey, thanks for checking out Still Saying Gaming. Today's my podcast slash interview with my friend Skirmisher about World of Warcraft and the current expansion of Legion. Alright, so we're going to get started here with our Warcraft questionnaire. So, my first question for you is I want you to talk a little bit about your tenure in WoW so far, how long you've been playing, what different races and classes you've played, how much Alliance and Horde, that kind of thing.
All right. I've been playing since 2004, November 2004, so pretty much from the beginning. Wasn't any one of the beta testing original gurus, so I don't have any beta cred. Like I was there from the very beginning when it was just pixelated stuff. But I was brought into it by a group of friends. We went out to eat one day, and they pulled out the box of World of Warcraft and set it in front of me and said, "Hey, here's your Christmas present early. And by the way, you're going to be playing a Night Elf Rogue, just so you know." So
here's the end of all your time.
pretty much. They had determined not only the game I was going to be playing for the next foreseeable future, but actually what I was going to be playing in that game. So as far as faction related, it was decided for me at the beginning. First character ever made, Night Elf Rogue, Alliance. Which is kind of ironic because now, as I've played more and more and more, I've played way more Horde characters.
Okay.
With my friends.
Nice. Now, were these the same people? I know you have a little bit of past MMO experience. Were these the same people that played other MMOs with you that brought you into this, or was this like a new group of people? Like, was it, hey, let's play this new one, or was, hey, let's play this game?
Well, they had brought me into it. My experience with MMOs was very, very limited before World of Warcraft. I had played EverQuest for a little bit. They were big EverQuest fans. And that was a new experience for me, actually being in an online game with other people playing at the same time. I mean, this is before Call of Duty and PlayStation and the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live or anything like that. So it was just completely different. And the whole open world adventure aspect of that really, not struck a chord, but it was new. So it was very interesting. So yes, they were the ones who brought me in from the other game. And actually right before we had started with World of Warcraft, like EverQuest 2 had just come out, and we had very shortly played that before this was released. I was surprised actually that they wanted me to play it because they weren't huge Blizzard proponents, whereas I had played all the other Blizzard games except for the Lost Vikings pretty much. So that was interesting.
Do you find it weird, like when you say 2004, that you've been playing this game for 12 years, like on and off?
Yeah, it definitely ages you. That's for a fact. When you know people right now that you could talk to on Skype or in real life, and you met them and they were 15, and you talk to them now, and it's, oh yeah, I'm 27, yeah, I got a kid, and this and this and that. You remember them being a teenager, asking their parents' permission to stay up late to go to a dungeon or a raid. That puts it in perspective. Very, very long longevity with the game. So, it's been going quite a while.
I think that's a good thing, though. I think it's a game that I didn't start at the beginning like you did, but I've definitely played on and off myself. My first character was a druid, a night elf druid too, which is odd, like you said, because that's maybe the only Alliance character I ever played up to a few levels, and then mostly Horde that we played with you guys, but. 12 years, more than a decade on the same game. I think that's a testament to Blizzard too, because if you just think of how much money you've gave them since then, Blizzard's hauling it in. How many guys have played for 12 years and paid their subscription every month, and
exactly.
Very cool. All right, so let's get into more of what's going on right now with World of Warcraft. Recently, the Legion expansion came out. One of our friends actually contacted us and not really talked us into playing, but displayed it in a real positive light. And so now we've sort of jumped back on. As someone who enjoys the lore of World of Warcraft very much, way more than I do. I learn something every time I talk to you about it. Every time I'm like, why is Gul'dan drinking that potion? Or, I've learned so much because I wasn't a big World of Warcraft 3 guy. What do you think about the questing? What do you think about this expansion's storytelling? Because even I've noticed, and maybe it was something that happened in Mist or Warlords, because I didn't experience those, but they've had more cutscenes. They seem to be driving that home with Illidan and all this other stuff in the Demon Hunters. What do you feel about that in the questing?
Well, with questing, you generally have two categories of it. Questing as it relates to, well, has questing gotten better? Is it more of the same? Is it me walking up to exclamation points and going out and either collecting things or killing things, or how it relates to the story? I think it's more the story that you're concentrated on. So as it applies to there, what I'll say is Blizzard, over the past few expansions, has tried to involve more of a story involved in its questing, and the cutscenes are part of that. They started out with each zone having like maybe a little bit of a sort of cutscene in Mists of Pandaria that continued that on, and Warlords of Draenor for sure, where it was an evolving storyline. In Legion, they seem to be doing some more of the same. It's a matter of whether or not you find that storyline appealing. And sometimes with the questing, it's like chapters of a book. I go to this zone, I reveal a little bit of the story, over here, and you hope that your questing pretty much basically reveals more of that. So if you use the story as an incentive for people to go down a certain quest line, it's more compelling. Now, if you're not interested in the lore of World of Warcraft, if you're just there to play the game, it's going to be less compelling to you. I have friends of mine who they don't read a lick of the quest text. Well, I don't know about that. We got different readers. We got heavy readers and say, well, I really want to know why everyone really hates Ferondis over here. Or, hey, I want to know why everyone just kind of brushes over the fact that these Illidari, just show up out of nowhere, where it is. But as far as the questing goes in Legion, I think it's been good so far. The mechanics of it are the same as it's pretty much always been. You're collecting stuff or killing stuff, but it's the story. And really it won't be until we get towards the end of the expansion if we'll be able to make an overall determination as to whether or not that questing has fulfilled its role in getting the players engaged in the story of Legion.
Well, I always feel like questing dies out after a while because as someone, again, who didn't experience as many of the cutscenes, one of the things I liked about for the MMO that I came from into WoW is that you felt like a character in the story. You would go to a place, a cutscene would happen, you were in that cutscene, they would talk to you, they would refer to you, and you felt important. Whether you were strong or not, you were not just watching like a movie. And I like this in this expansion where, because you've become this great war leader or whatever you are, depending on what class you are, it's involved you in that. It's like, hey, we need to talk to you to help us. Like as playing Demon Hunter, like Altruist guy is always talking to me.
Right.
And it was in other expansions, like how often did Thrall talk to you, or how often did Sylvanas talk to you? And so I've enjoyed that because it's made me feel like I'm driving what's going on rather than just watching. And as someone who doesn't read all the quests and isn't involved in all the lore, it's actually made me ask more questions of you as someone who played Warcraft 3 and pays attention to the expansions and played Mist and hasn't really missed an expansion. It's the same thing, like, careful for spoilers, of course, but that one cutscene we watched with Sylvanas and the werewolf guy, I was like, who's that dude? Why is he there? Why is he a werewolf? And
why is he so mad?
Exactly. Why is he so strong? How does he just get to walk out of there and she can't, destroy him because she's like the war chief now?
Right.
But I feel like it tapers off. Do you feel like that it still matters? Because do you think 3 months from now, if we're still playing Legion, is it going to matter that in Suramar I saw a cutscene where I helped some withered people?
I think it depends on how invested you are in the game and your attachment to it, and whether or not you find any enjoyment in those storylines. Some people look at Suramar and say, well, yeah, it's elves, but it's blue elves. Okay, so we got blood elves, we got night elves. Who cares what kind of elves they are? They're just, another version of a pointy-eared elf, and why should we care about their storyline or what they've been doing for the past 10,000 years? How is that relevant to us right now? So I think it involves, how much attachment you have to those people and whether or not you find their individual stories compelling. The NPC that I talked to do this quest for, do I really care about him? Or am I just going out to, collect a couple arcane mana jewels for him? Do I have an interest in how it progresses and how it unfolds to help me in my current storyline? So
do you feel like it takes away from it? You know, we've made this joke plenty of times since Legion started that you're still doing not like silly stuff, but you know, there's a quest to find some squirrels,
right?
And we joke that you know you're a paladin, so you're the leader of all of the paladins, and I'm a demon hunter, so me and Altruis are hanging out, and Illidan like calls me on the phone and stuff, and
right.
But yet still I have to go catch squirrels and pick flowers. Don't you think we should have people some outsource this by now, or is that just such a important part of what makes up an MMO, especially WoW? Because other MMOs didn't do that. I've played MMOs where they're not exclamation points and question marks. So you feel like it's like a fail-safe for them, so people feel it's familiar, or is it still just important for, maybe I'm getting too open-ended, but is it still just important to tell the story, or is it just such a tool for them to keep you playing the game, like World Quests, which are the new daily quests? Is it important for them to have that, or does it not matter? Like I said, is it compelling for you to get on and say, I need to go do Count of Ferranda's quest today? Or, because like I said, it was fun when we were watching the cutscenes and I'm watching the stuff with the Druid guys and I didn't know that story, and the demon guy, you know, throws the thing at the dragon, like, okay, that's really neat. But now it's, you know, go out and get 7 war pelts so you can get some gold so you can buy some stuff. Because I really like the rating. I really like the 5-mans, and anybody that plays this game with me would know that. Like, well, let's do 5-man. You know, let's go get some gear. I almost say, you know, like 80-20, my enjoyment of the game comes from rating, from my spec, from micromanaging my gear, to trying to beat a raid boss. And then the story and the background and stuff for this game isn't important. So like I said, my question, the questing, is it still, do you think it's still relevant? Do you think it's still important? Do you think still people are just digging that tool itself, though?
I think it really depends on your level of engagement and your level of immersion, and how much you're going to what do you call it, your suspension of disbelief. I get what you're saying. You know, I mean, hey, my character's a paladin. He's the high lord of all the paladins from the lore of the game that, you know, you would look up to and go, wow, that guy's a superhero, and he did this and he was in the books and all that. And now that guy's looking to you saying, so High Lord, what are we doing today? And you're, you know, what do you do? I think a good analogy would be, you know, if you were in the military and you're a private and you have a rifle in your hand and you're, you know, in a war, then naturally you're going to be in the thick of it, you know, dealing with the bad guys. Now, if you're one of the Joint Chiefs or the general, you're going to be sitting up in the command tent, and is your life going to be as action oriented as that guy? Well, probably not. You're going to be moving pieces here, giving orders and doing all that. I think that type questing will be unappealing for people, because people who get into these games are hands-on people. No matter how up the food chain that they go, they want to have an active role. And although it isn't implicitly stated in some of these missions, I think the overall theme that they were going for is, this is the world, and these world quests are areas in which there are current battlefronts going on. You can arrive as a legendary hero and lend your might to the forces to bolster them, inspire the troops around you. Now, it's not like you have an army standing behind you saying, oh, the High Lord's here, or, you know, the head demon hunter's here. But I think it allows you to add your efforts to the battles that you see fit. And the rewards that you get from that are just a way to incentivize players to actually go out and be involved in the world that they're technically fighting for. So, you know, overall, I think there's a system to it, but it beats sitting in your order hall and just using the command board, you know, to send your followers out to do all the story that you really want to participate in, you know. Well,
and I don't think it's wrong either. It's not a matter of right and wrong. I read some psychology stuff about why video games, and especially real-time strategy games, keep you playing. And that system of going and getting some trees and going and getting some ore and building a shack and then making that shack into a war hall and then making that war hall into a castle, like there's something inside your brain that clicks. It's almost like, you know, nicotine affecting you, or something, you know, or even something positive or negative. But they do that because it works. It's always worked. It's been 12 years of working. When you turned on World of Warcraft, you went and talked to the exclamation point and you turned it in a question mark. So why? I guess, you know, counter argument to my statement is why would they even change it? Because it works. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel not completionist, but that stacking feeling. I love it when we go turn in like 10 quests and we get 7 of those coins, and then I pour it back to Dollarine and open my bag, and I'm like, okay, I got this item and is this better? And like I said, it's very fulfilling. So maybe why would they even care to change it?
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
All right, so maybe we can delve a little deeper into some of the details about Legion and the comparisons. I definitely want to hit on a lot of the comparisons to the other expansions and things that were going on. So how do you feel about Demon Hunter so far? Will they change the landscape of the game? Do you feel like they'll be more or less impactful because less races can be them? And how does that relate to something like a race coming out like the Pandas, and then they can be monks, and then everybody can be a monk, or Death Knights, which were the first prestige class. Demon Hunter's a prestige class compared to Worgens, Pandas, people that can be certain jobs and can't be certain other jobs. But how does that impact the game? Do you think there'll be way less Demon Hunters because of that compared to monks? But I haven't seen a lot of monks. So.
Well, you show your Final Fantasy cred by saying job there. Okay, You're just starting to blur the lines there, but you got to be an MMO geek to understand that reference. The impactfulness of Demon Hunters. There's a lot to say about that. What I mean to say is Demon Hunters naturally are going to be a popular choice at the start of the expansion just because they are new. And with so many returning players, as it were, part of the reason why they are returning, you could say that it was because of the lore. A lot of it is the new class. A lot of people just like to take the new car out for a spin and see how it is. Plus, it allows them to start over and feel like they haven't missed anything. Maybe I didn't play Warlords of Draenor. Maybe I didn't play Mists of Pandaria. But now Legion is here. I might have that nostalgia towards the Burning Crusade, and Demon Hunter's there. Hey, I always wanted to play one of those ever since I got the Warglaives of Azeroth drop off of Illidan. So that allows them to jump back into the game feeling that they haven't missed anything because, hey, they couldn't have played a Demon Hunter in the previous expansion anyway. So it gives them a new starting point, which is very appealing to many. As far as how it compares, whether or not it's going to be impactful in the future, I think during this expansion they will be extremely relevant. There have been several lore characters that are Demon Hunters that have been pretty cool. They haven't made a huge impact on the world. Illidan is the most famous, of course. He's had the biggest impact. He's the father of Demon Hunters, if you will. No one knows really. I mean, I don't know even in the lore if he's the first of the Demon Hunters or if he was trained by somebody else. In comparison to the other ones, and try and be brief here. In comparison to the other classes, I think it looks at Blizzard's decision on how they make classes. You had mentioned Death Knight and Monk, and we have to take a look at those two classes and things like Pandaren and racial choices when it comes to classes. The first of those is Death Knight is a prestige class. First time they ever came out with it, but Monk was not. So why the prestige class for Death Knight but not for Monk? And I think it relates to the release of the new race and the continent of Pandaria. Now, one could easily argue, well, hey, I want to play a Pandaren, but what if Pandarans could only be monks? That would be too much of a squeezing of that race into that one role. People wouldn't like that. When people play a race, they want to have many, many, many different choices. And while you might have a certain class limited to a few races, you have never had a race limited to a single class.
So it would be worse the other way around.
Correct.
You can only do this. They're like, okay, well, I don't like that, because it's almost forcing you into that decision.
Right. It would be like you play a Night Elf Druid male. Hey, you can only be a Druid. You know, the lore, when you look at the game and everything like that, I didn't see any male Night Elves in any other role. All the warriors were women and sentinels. So you would have those two classes. Oh, you're a female? Well, you can be a priestess of Elune, or a warrior. I think the main difference in the classes and how it affects the expansion going forward is how the lore supports those classes over time, and if they feel like they fit in. People who play those classes, they want to feel like they belong to the world, and sometimes that's hard. to do. With Demon Hunter, it is very, very, very easy to see how they fit in the Legion. The story distinctly involves them. So they're sitting around, they're fighting Legion. Now, imagine if Miss of Pandaria came out after Legion instead of before it. Would Demon Hunters fit in the world of Chinese landscape? You know, with a distinctly Asian feel, where you're not fighting any demons, you're fighting their own type of demons, the Shah? Maybe not. You might feel less a part of that world. That's the advantage that the basic classes of the game have, you know. So,
well, I think it was easier for them to start at the beginning too, with like you said, in Mist. Now you have an area too. When Blood Elves became a thing, it was okay. You can go out here in the Ghost area and their starting city and begin something there. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that goes into it some too. Well, we don't have a Death Knight city. You know, we don't have a Death Knight town where all the Death Knights live. So you sort of grow up into that. So if you started in Barrens and you went through everything and then you were already a class and then you got stronger, you could be a Death Knight.
Right.
So maybe that's I didn't think about that, because most of those things have a starting area, whereas Demon Hunters don't. There's no Demon Hunter starting area where you're like a level 1 Demon Hunter and learning how to use your Warglaives and stuff like that.
Right.
That's interesting.
And I think that another thing, when it comes to how the classes are related, I think that Blizzard has learned, not from a mistake, but by how they implement the new prestige class. Since Demon Hunter is a prestige class and you have to have a level 70 character to do it, I agree with their decision to make it close to max level starting with the expansion. I think although the Death Knight, you know, was a welcome addition to the game, even if it didn't so much match some of the lore that Blizzard had, the one failure, if you want to call it a failure, is that you have Wrath of the Lich King that was launched. You're going to go fight Arthas. Hey, I'm going to make a Death Knight, and he's level 58. All right, I've completed the Death Knight starting zone. I've thrown off the shackles of the Lich King. I'm ready to go forward and fight him and confront him in Ice Crown. I'm going to go through the Dark Portal in the Hellfire Citadel and do Burning Crusade. You know, with the Demon Hunter, Blizzard, they learned their lesson. They said, hey, you're going directly into the fight in the most recent expansion, and it's going to be relevant. So I think it's really good as compared to previous classes that they've released.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here with this one, though. So as far as classes are concerned, what's your favorite one? Or maybe just which one have you played the most, if you don't feel like you need to, like, do you have a favorite one that you would always default to? Because I feel Blizzard, with this game, I know they upset me with Diablo sometimes with classes. Why don't you do an expansion? Why don't you release a couple classes? You know, I might still be playing Diablo 3 some if they had 5 more classes. Not to get off on a completely separate tangent.
Right.
But in this game, having a new class to play, and it's one thing, if you had came to me and you had said, hey, we're going to play Legion, and I would say, I don't know, you know, maybe. Well, do you want to? Yeah, no, you're going to be a rogue, paladin. But when they came and said, you're going to play Legion, you can be a Demon Hunter. I was kind of like, all right. I might give that a whirl then. You know, let's check that out. Like, Demon, I can fly, and I got these 2 swords. You know, I have an affinity for 2 weapon fighting, and I was like, all right, I can try that. They're neat. They fit my style, whereas Death Knight didn't even close. They were like Death Knight, and you watched it, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So Rogue and Demon Hunter and Paladin are the only ones I've ever invested any sort of serious time in. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to answer this question because I haven't but I'm going to put it on you. What's your favorite, or which one have you played the most?
Well, that is probably one of the hardest questions out there, for a couple of reasons. In that I've played almost all of them. Haven't really delved that far into Demon Hunter as of yet.
My fault, of course.
No, that's not your fault. You know, but when you play with friends, you know, sometimes when you have 2 friends and they're really competitive, and you know, you gotta make sure they don't have that same class, because they'll start warring with each other and be like, yeah, if you were Havoc like I was, or if you played Vengeance once in a while, maybe you'd understand what I was saying. I think that I'm drawn to classes that can perform multiple roles, just because I've always been a filler in a raid slot or in a dungeon slot. I like the versatility of being able to do everything, but that's also a weakness because you're not focused on one thing. I think it's always good to play those classes. Things like Druid, very appealing because you can literally do everything. The Paladin, is another of those. Plus, it's the archetypical good guy, as it were, on the horse, sword, armor. It fits very much into the lore. Probably one of the classes that I really, really enjoyed, though, is I did enjoy the monk when it was released. It was not the version of the monk that I thought that they would have, but when I played it, it fit very much in the lore. It's one of those things where, well, does the lore continue now that we're out of that expansion? So it is incredibly hard to decide what it is. I don't know if I do have a favorite class. Right. Just because that's so much. I mean, I've played different expansions, and it seems in each expansion I have a different main, and I have an appreciation for that character. So it's really hard. But I usually lean towards multi-role classes. That's an answer. That definitely fits that gap. I think for me, and you know this about me maybe as much as anyone, the aesthetic of those classes is what really drives me. Right.
Even what they do, I've found a love for tanking in the most recent expansions, but I was rogue for a long, long time. And again, the 2-weapon fighting, and then the shield and sword deal is still 2 items that they're using. Always that drives me, because there are classes, for me, as you probably know, at this point, and knowing what I know about the game, even after 10 years, 12 years, however long, which is probably why most of us don't have it, because you keep changing.
Right.
Their class I will never play.
Right.
Their classes I've never even clicked on and considered. I wonder what I'd look like as a priest. Nope.
You're not going to play a warlock anytime
no
soon?
warlocks, yeah.
That has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with their tuning. Okay.
Exactly. If they were the best one, I'd still be like, I'm not playing that. Everybody's going to have a warlock. Well, I'm going to be something else,
Yep.
And tanking too is sort of, again, with Demon Hunter was easy for me, because when I looked at them, they said, "Oh, you can tank as that. Oh, you can tank as a 2-weapon dude." Because I tanked some on other games as like ninja and stuff that wasn't sword and board, traditional tanking. Even what was the name of the game? I'm blanking on it now. Where I was to jump around warrior tank with the tall girls. Terra.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
tanking on there was something like, what are you doing? Why don't you stop moving? Tanks stand there with the shield and take the hits, and these tanks are like flying around and doing crazy
action combat.
Exactly, which is a little more like Demon Hunter. So again, I don't know that I'd have a strong answer for that. I wouldn't be like Rogue, even though I probably played Rogue more than anything.
Right.
I'd probably say the ones that are the most aesthetically pleasing for me, no matter what they did. Because Rogue I really enjoyed, and also Blood Elf, because again, they're the class that I think is the most aesthetically pleasing for me. So whatever they can do would be, if they came out with a really new class that I really liked, and it could only be orcs.
Right.
I would still have. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I like Berserker, but I don't think I'm be at orcs. So to each their own on that. But I think that's an interesting choice for all of us, because I've seen you play a handful of them.
Oh, right. Right. You have to be involved in the class fantasy of your character and like how they are. So
for sure. Okay, so lastly here, let's sort of tie a little bit of a bow on some of the ideas that we've got after today. And the last thing I want to ask you about is, do you feel like this is the last expansion? And a lot of times when I play, again, based on the story, I don't know. Because, again, I'm a card-carrying, not quest reader. So I'm not like, well, Illidan's finally going to take over the world, and Gul'dan's dead, and Sylvanas is the war chief. That's signaling in the end. I don't know that. I have no clue about that part in particular. The part that I feel is, again, going back to how strong you are. How much stronger can you get if you finish this expansion? Who's at the end? I don't know. Do you know who's going to be at the end of this expansion? I don't know. Who's at the end of Emerald Nightmare? I don't know. I haven't looked it up. But when you beat whoever it is, if it's Illidan, if it's whoever, and you get their loot and you get their armor, and you're already the leader of the Paladins and the leader of the Demon Hunters, like what could possibly be next for them? And where can they go from that? Because expansion-wise, if there's another expansion, is this the end? Because their subscriptions going down, and they're going free-to-play almost with some of the stuff they're doing. You can make enough money to make it free-to-play. What do you think about that? Is this the end?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, it's always about your character growth. What your character is going to do. Now, levels generally translate into how that happens. Well, hey, I'm a level 1 character. Everyone knows I'm at the beginning of my journey. The end of vanilla, I'm a level 60 character. I'm toward the end, but it's based on my raid content. Here in Legion, you're right. You're the High Lord of the Paladin, or you're the head mage or the head priest, and you have the greatest weapon that has ever been forged. If you're a paladin, you have the Ashbringer, or you have Doomhammer, or what are you going to get in the next expansion, if there is one? And is Legion the last one? I think the overall answer to that question depends on how much the lore supports that. The expansions are driven by lore, and what a lot of veteran World of Warcraft players have said is that there's no RTS anymore. Warcraft 3 being their last one, released well over 12 years ago, and even more so before that, is that gave us all the characters that we're currently centered around. That gave us Thrall, that gave us Arthas, that gave us Illidan, that gave us Malfurion and Tyrande, and all the other ones that are in the lore. Without a game like that to create some buzz, how is it going to go forward? And they're introducing a lot of the big bads of the story. Naturally, you bring Illidan back because he's a fan favorite. You've already killed the Lich King. It's not like you can resurrect Arthas. No. Or can you?
well, wasn't Illidan the end of Burning Crusade? Wasn't he the last dude too?
You would think so. Yeah. See, the way they structured their expansion there is no, Illidan was not the end of Burning Crusade. Everyone expected him to be the final boss, but they introduced the Sunwell. And in the Sunwell, who did you fight? Kil'jaeden. You fought the weakened form of Kil'jaeden trying to enter the world, which you have never had him fully in there. We've killed Archimonde twice. Right. We killed Archimonde twice. They dragged him up out of the grave, and I hate to say it, Blizzard really kicks their dead horses here. They will resurrect a boss like that. It's Kel'Thas Sunstrider. We fought him in Tempest Keep. Let's put him in this 5-man. Oh, we fought Anu Barak and Ojol Narub. Oh, that was too lame. He's much more of a lore character than that. You guys are angry? We're going to put him in Trial of the Crusader. He's going to be the boss that you fall through the floor and fight. So Blizzard loves pulling back some of its creations for those. So it depends on if the lore supports it. They've introduced the Queen Ashara character and actually shown her elven form, of course. They've shown her in her little Medusa Naga form, but she's always been blacked out. So that's Blizzard's way of saying, well, we don't want to show you that she has the same character model as the other ones right now. Right. So, they might have a much, much cooler one, because honestly, if they did, people would say, oh, they've done a new character model. We're fighting Queen Ashara in this expansion. It depends on how many of these lore characters we kill or deal with. I mean, Xavius is one where people are like, Xavius? Who the heck is Xavius, And it's like, oh yeah, remember that guy you set free, way back in the Cataclysm expansion, and he has a story before that? No, I didn't read none of that. I just clicked on it, went out, saved a couple fawns, and collected some elemental dust to free him.
When you said it, I was like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know
exactly. So it depends on if the lore supports it. If you get an expansion where you kill Queen Ashara, kill Xavius, free Illidan, or defeat Illidan, what's all behind it? Well, the big, huge bad guys that they've always lurked around are the old gods, which gives Blizzard a nameless number of demonic / mysterious shadow entities that they can pull out from the void, because you always had this thing called the Twisting Nether, which is where the Legion's from. And then you have Sargeras lurking in the background. Are we ever going to fight Sargeras? We're at the Tomb of Sargeras now. This guy is like the most bad titan out there of the whole pantheon. Are we really going to fight that guy? Kil'jaeden. Are we ever going to fight him?
Like the real
fully in the
Kil'jaeden,
world,
yeah.
Manifested.
Well, he threatens you in the Demon Hunter thing. He comes up to the ship and stuff and talks to you. It's like a vision of him.
Yep. And and then they have currently the lore right now of the Army of Light. With Terralia and Ilaria out there. What have they been doing in the Nehru, and what have they been fighting this whole time? And there's this other bad thing happening on the heels of this invasion, it's like, look, that invasion's bad, but you don't know what's going on out here. We've discovered the true threat. So it depends on how many bad guys they can come up with. You have to have a compelling bad guy, and I know you and I agree on this. If you have a story, you have cinema, you have a story, the bad guy is almost more interesting than the good guy. And if that guy is really compelling, no matter who it is, then you're going to be interested in crossing swords with that guy or girl.
So you think there definitely could? Listen, I think there'll probably be at least one more, because they'll have their money grab one. They'll have their. It'll be like a sports athlete going out and doing their tour at the end. It's like, hey, gave y'all almost 2 decades of content, or a decade and a half, and buy this expansion. Just for the old high five. Just thanks, guys. And on the way out, I think they will at least do one to say, let's just put it to bed. But it worries me about races and classes and everything, because where else can they go? Who else can we kill? Again, who are we going to fight? How strong are we? So now we're fighting gods. So we're going to fly into the Twisted. I'm going to take the Fellhammer and fly into the Twisted Nether and kill, Sargeras or somebody. Something
take
crazy.
your Star Destroyer in there
Exactly.
and blow up the planet.
It's always where I worry that a lot of things go to, where I always fuss about, and I'll get a little bit on my soapbox here, when the people get too strong.
Right.
When the people get too strong, that's where the shows go downhill. That's where the games go downhill. It's like, all right, who's going to fight you now? Like, who is even... What would threaten you? If I've got the leader of all the paladins and the leader of all the demon hunters and the leader of all the mages, and these bad dudes, like, who would it possibly take all those people to kill? And I almost worry that they get a little silly after a while, because there are characters out there they could fight. But
I mean, I have an answer for that, and in the newest expansion, I guarantee you that the wildlife of that country is more fierce than any of you have ever faced, and those boars will be a risk to your character, because you won't be able to just one-shot them. You'll have to go and collect their tusks, and they're so tough that your artifact legendary weapon won't just cleave through them in one hit. You won't be able just to unsheath it and go zzzz, laser beam like Khadgar in the cutscene, where he becomes the guardian anyway. But I think it just depends on your question of, if Blizzard has an end in sight, if they know that this is going to end eventually, because all things end. Right. How do you do that? And how do you do that in a way that satisfies the community, but yet leaves it open for them to continue playing the game that they so enjoy without it being supported by new content? Because that happens to all the games that we played. World of Warcraft hasn't had to deal with that question just because it is so massively popular and got into the business right when MMOs were like coming out and are hot. But we see many other games right now that have fallen off due to lack of subscription. I think World of Warcraft is going to have to deal with when we run out of story. And with the departure of Chris Metzen from the company, he was a huge lore person. I mean, he pretty much came up with a lot of that lore. And if he's retiring from Blizzard, some people say, well, that's just because the guy's loaded. Who wants to go and work at a company every day? But there had to have been some sort of change. Like, I wonder myself, I said, is it because he sees the end of what he's created? Has he given them the last little bits, like George R.R. Martin in Game of Thrones? Has he given the story to the producers of the show and said, look, if I die, this is what happens, if he's done that or not. Oh. And maybe he, just says, well, I'm not going to stay on for the extra 3 or 4 years for you to come to close. But I've told the story that I wanted to tell, and I'm satisfied with it and what people have gotten out of it.
Well, there's something to be said for going out on top. I don't know that there's a game or a franchise. I look at a lot of video game sites and stuff, and Final Fantasy is still going because they have such an entrenched player base that they can make enough content, and they've got enough die-hard people. And we played some of the new one.
Right.
It's cool.
Right.
But I feel like, who's going to fill that void? It's not going to be, how many have we went through? Tabula Rasa, Conan, Terra.
Right.
Like, we have tried other MMOs to get away from WoW, and what are we sitting here talking about? World of Warcraft.
Well, what's going to be the WoW killer? Yeah.
There's nothing, because not only that, World of Warcraft and games like that and mobile games stopped, and again, we're going to get off on a way another topic when I wrap this up, stopped RTSs aren't what they used. There's very few. World of Warcraft probably stopped there some because of the lore thing you were talking about. Like, we're not going to make an RTS and make these characters and then have to follow that with our billion-dollar franchise. Like, we're not making Warcraft 4, not because we don't want to make Warcraft 4, because we will not force ourselves into any lanes while we're making all this money. But the same thing, MMOs are on the decline because Warcraft is on the decline, and that is your measuring stick. If that's going downhill, then it's all going downhill. They're all polishing the brass on the Titanic kind of thing. Because what are you going to do? Who's going to fill that void? Not anything. I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to think of a franchise that would have that sort of following and that sort of, even Star Wars, made, and that doesn't hold. Like, I just wonder what it could possibly be.
Well, it's just the evolution of games. Some people would say, well, Warcraft might end, and maybe it'll take a different form. Warcraft came from an RTS and became an MMORPG. Right. What if it evolves into something else, and we may not even know what that is right now? I mean, MOBAs were based off of RTSs.
Right.
You have RTSs and everything in different scenarios, and someone said, hey, I'm going to take this and modify it and make a game out of it, and boom, you have the MOBA.
Right.
And then the MMO, developed from other games. So, if it ends, maybe it just evolves. Maybe it becomes something else. So, it's kind of exciting to see exactly what's going to happen. I'm kind of looking forward to the conclusion. I love final books, even though I hate them, because you're like, oh man, I wish there was like another book that this author would write. But World of Warcraft will be no different. When World of Warcraft eventually comes to an end, love, hate, some of the expansions, none of the expansions, you can't deny its profound effect on gaming as a whole.
For sure.
And it's just really, really hard to think about the end of it. But, when it comes, if it comes, it'll be interesting to see what form that takes, because I don't have the answer.
For sure. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So, overall, I think I'm glad that we're playing Legion. I'm glad that on the basis level of what we're doing, maybe not the basis, but just the fact of getting on and playing these games with my friends, and like you said, this game's been out for a long, long time. We've all gotten older. Right. We've all gotten busier, which just happens as you get older. For all the young people listening to this, like, do your fun stuff now, because it gets hardcore later. And I think it's really awesome that we can still find something, a common denominator for us. And I appreciate that Blizzard's done that. I don't know another franchise. There's 3 franchises that stand out in my head when I think of, and I guess you could almost say Blizzard, but there are a couple of franchises that stand out in my head that I've spent more time in than anything else, and that's World of Warcraft, Diablo, Street Fighter, and Final Fantasy. Right. And this game maybe be the game I've played the most out of any game in my whole life.
Right.
And that's saying a lot, because I've played a lot of games, and I've played a lot of games for a long time, but when you say what game have I played the most, whether I have complaints about it, that's the game I've played the most. Is obviously a reason.
Right.
And I sort of just appreciate what they've done, what they've tried. They failed, they've succeeded, but overall, I mean, they've got to feel like I feel like they've succeeded and played it for 10 years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I appreciate everybody out there that listened to this. I appreciate Skirmisher here. He's helped me out today to just parse out my thoughts, and hopefully some of you have gotten some out of this, and hopefully your questions and comments, and anybody that wants to comment or leave something in the section out here, or like my video on YouTube, I totally appreciate all that. Again, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your answers. I really appreciate those.
More than happy.